Hey everybody, Tracy here. First of all, I want to thank you guys for your understanding about me having to cancel our Zoom meeting this week, on such short notice. The dean had an event that she was supposed to attend and she ended up, she couldn't at the last minute. Our associate dean was out of town, so they asked me to step in and represent the College of Business and LSUS at this particular event. So again, I appreciate your flexibility and your understanding. So tonight, or today earlier, I'm sorry, I hosted a Q&A, which I've uploaded that recording for you guys in Moodle, just like I will do with this particular recording. So, if you're having questions about the case study or anything like that, please feel free to watch that. I know also too in the instructor virtual office, there have been some questions about case study number 2 and some exemplars. So I reloaded those again today for you guys. So there's actually 3 samples posted in week 4 that you can look at. So ideally your case study number 2 is going to be due this Sunday, tomorrow, November 22nd. But I understand, if you guys can't get it in, that's fine. I know there's a lot going on. So you don't even have to email me, just submit it when you can. Just know that I'm going to put that 0 in there for myself to remember to come back and to double check and grade everything when people do their submissions. I also went ahead and opened up weeks 6 and 7 for you. So you've got week 5, 6, and 7, because I know some of you have a little bit of extra time this week because you have the Thanksgiving break and may want to work ahead. So I will see you again in our next Zoom meeting on December the 2nd. But tonight, let's talk about and look at some of the information that I was hoping to go over with you guys had we been able to have our Zoom meeting. So if you'll bear with me just a second, I want to share my screen with you guys. Okay, there we go. All right. So we are in week 4. We are at the halfway point. Just a reminder, like I said, I just went over this, and then you can see when everything else is due. And then your case study number 3 is a really culminating sort of project for the course. So since it's all open, you can look at that and see what the final exam is going to involve. So let's talk tonight about curriculum mapping and some of the work from both Brent Wiggins and Jay McTighe, as well as Heidi Hayes Jacobs. If you haven't figured this out yet, I have 3 educational heroes who work a lot on curriculum alignment, and it's definitely going to be Wiggins, McTighe, Heidi Hayes Jacobs, and then Fenwick English. I think they're the ones who they've first of all done the most work. They're highly respected researchers, and they're used and referenced pretty universally in schools and school districts and parishes across the country, even if they're not named as researchers. You see their pieces of their work throughout the country. So let's talk about let's start first with Heidi Hayes Jacobs and her model for curriculum mapping. So we know one thing, that public and private learning organizations have to strive, and this comes directly from the work of Wiggins and McTighe, to ensure that their mission, vision, and goals are not only attainable, they're sustainable. And how do you do that? Well, it's through the work of curriculum and instruction. So, if you look at the works, particularly of Wiggins and McTighe, they talk a lot about setting the vision and the mission for a school, and then making sure that everything you do within that school is aligned to that vision and mission. And if there's not alignment between the vision, mission, and the work, then, we're not going to accomplish those things that we've set out to do. So very, very important. So one of the things I like most about Heidi Hayes Jacobs' model and how she does curriculum mapping is the fact that it synthesizes both traditional and contemporary models, because it recognizes the connectivity, and we've talked a lot about this, between curriculum, instruction, and assessment, or as she says, learning, assessing, and teaching. She took Fenwick English's work. He's probably been the one doing the work the longest in the field. So some people consider his work a little bit outdated. I would disagree. I think there's still very important elements we can pull out of Fenwick English's work. But he talks about the alignment between the taught curriculum excuse me, with the written curriculum, the taught curriculum, and then the assessed curriculum. He says that if there's a misalignment between any of those, then we know that we have problems and that our students are not going to be able to do what they're supposed to do. So, excuse me just 1 minute. Milo, hush. So, we also know too that Heidi Hayes Jacobs talks a lot about both vertical and horizontal alignment. So it's important to not only align our curriculum across classrooms at the same grade level or same subject matter. We also have to look at the grades above as well as the grades below. So in an ideal world, schools are going to spend time working with, not only teachers who teach the grade or the same content, or they're going to work with teachers, so if I'm a 4th grade teacher, it's important that I also do alignment work with the 3rd grade teachers and the 5th grade teachers. And those reviews have to be cyclical and they have to be ongoing. Because if they're not, then, like I said, we're going to have missed opportunities to really provide the kind of teaching and learning that our students need. So, how do we go about this whole idea of curriculum mapping and unpacking standards and aligning curriculum assessment and learning? Well, the easiest, I wouldn't say it's easy, it's hard work, but it's also probably the most impactful work that we can do in terms of assuring student achievement. So how do we do that? We know that the more we collaborate with other teachers and educators, the better off we're going to be. So for example, I know when I was still high school principal, we were able to create a schedule that teachers got 2 planning periods a day. So one period was for their own personal planning. The other period was a required everyday collaborative learning and teaching session. So they had time every single day, a solid 45-minute block of time to plan with each other. And that's when we began to see, because we spent so much time on curriculum instruction and assessment, that our achievement results began to really soar and to absolutely just go through the roof. We can't expect teachers to do work like that when we don't give them the time. Time is so important. We also look at and think about this from a unit of study standpoint. I'm kind of amazed at how many teachers I find, and even cooperative teachers, who don't plan for units. We have to break all this down, and the unit study is really, really important. When we map the curriculum and we figure out what that essential content is, it may be that we start with the district or the program's curriculum, and then we figure out what is the most essential high-stakes pieces of that, and how are we going to go about getting that alignment done and that mapping done. And then we can also do what they call consensus maps. So essential maps generally come from the district level, and then those move into consensus maps, which we do at the school sites. And then that diary map may be the teacher's personal map as part of their lesson plan. So remember too, curriculum instruction and assessment, that CIO triad, is not a spectator sport. It's not that we just watch other people do it and we take it in our classroom and implement it. If you really want to be successful, teachers have to have time, as I said, to prepare and to be active participants in this work. And the way that we do that has to be supported from our administration. So like I said, we were carved out time during the day for teachers to plan. We also have to teach teachers how to map appropriately. We can't just say, go map the curriculum and wish them well. Tons of tools, as you probably have figured out, I'm a huge fan of templates. So we give templates to teachers, we give them exemplars, we give them models, and allow them the freedom and flexibility to apply and use those as they see fit. But teachers have to get in there and get dirty with curriculum. It's not enough just to read the guide and plan your lesson. You have to go in and look at the guide and make sure that it is truly aligned to the assessment, that it's going to meet the needs of your students, because your students are unique and have different abilities and skill levels than every other student. And then we have to make sure that you are able to apply that analysis into a map that makes sense to you. You know, the other part of this too is that curriculum mapping is never finished. We're never going to have a perfect product. Standards change, expectations change, the assessments change. So we have to get in there frequently and look at curriculum and really analyze it and unpack it so that it makes sense to us. We also know too that when we think about using the understanding by design curriculum model, you know, some of those things are going to be predetermined for us. So for example, I was reading through and looking today at some of, when I was writing y'all's DVD templates, and one of you focused on high school math and area and perimeter. So we already know from the standards that our students have to have an understanding of area and perimeter. That's predetermined for us because those are written into the standards, what our students need to know. We also have to understand that those standards, if they're not unpacked, they can be very complex, and if they're not unpacked the way that they should be, then we're going to miss the boat. So that essential map, like I said, is generally created at the central administration level or as part of the curriculum, and it's more like that unit plan element. Then from there, teachers work together in collaborative groups, like I said, either within your grade level or maybe you're doing some horizontal planning. And so like I said, it's done in your grade level or your content area, but you may also be doing it vertically. So if you're going to be teaching, let's say, area and perimeter in 10th grade geometry, you may want to work with the 9th grade algebra teachers, as well as you know, the Algebra 2 teachers at the next grade level, so that we can ensure that we're equipping our students with the kinds of skills they're going to need to be successful in the next course. So that becomes the consensus map. Then the diary or projected map, depending on who you know, who you're talking to, which term they're going to use, is where the teachers take that essential map, they create the consensus map collaboratively with their teams, and then they take those elements to create their own personal lesson plan. You know, I've never been an advocate for everybody has to teach the exact same way and use the exact same learning strategies, because everybody's different, and most importantly, every student is different. So it's really, really critical that we look at this across time. Remember, mapping is a verb by design. And it requires us to have that collegial dialogue, to really get in there and talk with each other and to, you know, challenge each other when necessary. It is an active, collaborative activity, and it should be an ongoing part of all of the instructional decision making that we're doing. And we should also make sure too that when we're doing mapping, that we're providing evidence that's authentic about what our students have learned as well as what they have not learned. So not only are we spending time in those collaborative meetings doing curriculum mapping, we're also spending time when they're looking at assessment results, achievement data, those kind of things. But we also want to look at student artifacts. So, you know, if we had our students do a particular assignment, you know, bring in maybe, you know, your A excellent paper, an average paper, and then a student who struggled or didn't do well, so that we can look at what the students are doing and maybe why those students that did great, you know, what were those elements they got and understood versus those students who struggle? What were the misunderstandings? We also have to be willing to spend some time looking at what our teachers are doing in terms of teaching practice. Now, I'm not talking about formal evaluation or those gotcha kind of visits that, you know, sometimes we used to call them drive-bys that administrators will do. I'm talking about true coaching. You know, and you guys explored last week and looked at Boyle's matrix. It's a great way to differentiate coaching. So if an administrator comes in your classroom and spends even 5 minutes, there should always be some kind of verbal and written feedback. And then there should be some coaching. You know, that's how we help teachers grow. Even our best teachers want and desire that kind of feedback and coaching. So I know one of the things that I taught my principals to do was we worked on Boyle's matrix, we differentiated coaching and what that looked like for each teacher, you know, depending on where they fell in the quadrants in terms of Boyle's matrix. And then we would go in and model lessons. So for example, if I had a teacher who was really struggling with doing checks for understanding, we had this sort of seamless dance where the teacher would try it a little bit and then the principal would step in and maybe demonstrate something. And if the principal still was having a time, then I might step in and demonstrate something so that the teacher could see right there, real time with their students, how these strategies can be employed and how they can be most effective. So just to kind of recap, remember, we have that essential map, that is our unit plan. We have the consensus map, which is done collaboratively. And that leads into that personal diary map, that is the teacher's lesson plan. Within that, we need to make sure we're in classrooms frequently. Whether you're a master teacher or department chair, we even had teachers do walks at each other's classrooms, because it's all about providing feedback and support. So when we think about the principles that have to do with curriculum decision making, one of the things that we stole from Dr. Hayes Jacobs was the idea of the empty chair. So when we were planning and working on curriculum and thinking about instruction, all of those things, we always put an empty chair at the front of the room. And so when we would get to that final point where we thought we decided on everything, that empty chair represented a student. And it may, and we would alternate. That may be our high achieving student. Does it meet their needs? What about our average students? It's going to get them what they need. And then for our struggling students, are these the best decisions for those? So, how do you modify and maintain curriculum and instruction that really is in the best interest of the students? We have to do that and think both qualitatively and quantitatively in terms of the data that we're able to gather. So we know that it's important that we give them tools, that we empower our teacher leaders, and most importantly, we reward them for this very hard and challenging work. We also have to know that curriculum is something that's taken in small steps. It's not that you have to bite off the whole curriculum, and it's not that you're going to map the whole thing before school starts, because there's too many variables throughout the school year to do that. I know some principals would set aside like a whole week before school started and all they would do is math and they'd like, the whole year done. And I'm like, okay, what happens when the school catches on fire? Which it actually did. One of my high schools had a real fire with students there, and we had to close school down for several days and kind of rework everything. So that great curriculum map didn't work so well after we took away some of their very valuable instruction time. Certainly, in light of COVID and the closing of our schools and moving and transitioning to virtual learning and then back to face-to-face and all these things, our curriculum maps are going to be a train wreck at best. But if you take them in small chunks, maybe you do a 6 weeks at a time, or you even do a month at a time, or you just do based on the unit plan. So if the unit's 2 weeks long, then you're going to map for 2 weeks. If it's a month long, you're going to map for 4 weeks. Those kind of things. And we have to, as Heidi Hayes Jacobs talks about, making sure that our teachers do not do what she calls the treadmill teaching, which is that they basically are running breathless when it comes to trying to get everything they think needs to be taught, done, and taught. Remember, they give us more standards than we can possibly teach. So it's important that we understand the difference between a high-stakes standard and a low-stakes standard. And the only way we know what is high stakes is if we analyze those state and national assessments. And remember, it's not teaching to the test, because if the test is testing the state's curriculum and standards, then it's our obligation to teach those things that our students need to be successful. So we have to give our teachers time to slow down, to collaboratively evaluate, and to set those expectations, as well as to teach those soft skills and habits of mind that our students desperately need. And so as a result, we want to create, as leaders, an environment where our teachers can work smarter and not harder, in equipping our students for success. So as I said, there are all kinds of tools out there. Some people love the work that Paul Bambrick-Santoyo is doing in data-driven instruction. He gives you a ton of templates. I like the work that Wiggins and McTighe's done through the Understanding by Design. There's also some things right now that are coming out from Phil Schlechte, you know, and that's brain-based learning. So like I said, it's not that you have to choose, you know, one of my tools. You could choose several tools even. But this isn't something that you have to create from zero. There are a lot of really good sort of guidebooks out there that you can use to help with all of this. You know, so we also have to make sure too that we have those internal communication capabilities so that we can in real time make corrections or adjustments or additions to the curriculum. So if your district gives you a curriculum and they don't allow you as a teacher to give them feedback on it, then that's a real problem. Because, you know, in fact, this is kind of it's a good thing my daughter was with me, I'll just put it that way. So we happen to be at Dillard's here in Bossier City, and we are, this was before COVID, and we are buying something, I remember this. And the lady that was in front of me was talking to the salesperson about her job. And so she happened to be a curriculum writer here in Bossier City. And the lady was asking her, what are y'all going to do if we, you know, because they were talking about the shutdown happening. What are y'all going to do if they shut down the schools? Well, my ears perked up because I have two granddaughters in school. But also I was curious, you know, I mean, I'm not in the field making those decisions anymore like I used to, but I was very curious. And she said, well, you know, since I write curriculum, from a curriculum standpoint, we're just going to forge ahead no matter what. And I'm thinking, forge ahead no matter what. So she begins to talk a little more about that no matter what, no matter how much school time was lost or how challenging, I think was the word she used, I would have said ineffective, virtual schooling was, that regardless, when the students advance to the next grade level, they're just going to start with those grade level objectives. And like I said, it's a good thing my daughter knows me well and she could see my blood starting to boil. And I wanted so badly to really kind of call this lady to task, you know, about how can you expect students to move forward with the new grade level objectives when they haven't had the opportunity to demonstrate their learning because the assessment's all messed up from the previous year. And I'm not saying that you just throw out the current objectives, but you're going to have to be a lot more intentional in terms of knowing what the students have mastered and what they haven't. You're going to have to do a prescriptive teaching model. You can't just forge ahead. Because when you do, let's take mathematics, for example. So if students don't learn the appropriate concepts in mathematics in the elementary grades, they're going to crater when they get to Algebra 1 in high school. The same is true if they don't learn the appropriate and necessary writing, you know, conventions and grammar and usage and how to put together an essay and all of that. There's going to be so many gaps that they're going to crater when they get to English 1 in high school. And those are two gateway courses that are our best predictors. How students do in Algebra 1 and English 1 are our best predictors of whether or not students are going to be able to graduate and then go on to technical school, trade school, college, military, etc. And like I said, it's a good thing my daughter was there because she kept me from causing a scene basically at Dillard's. But we have to really stop and think about what we're doing. And just because I'm not telling you to be a rebel, although I always was, but and ignore what central office does. But we have to be thoughtful and intentional about what we do in our schools and our classrooms. So I'll get off my soapbox, but this is why curriculum mapping matters. And with virtual schooling and teachers not being able to be physically together, you know, as we may move into another lockdown, who knows? What the new normal is going to be for all of us, we still need to be somehow collaborative planning with each other, whether that's through Zoom or other means. We also need to make sure too that our teachers are the ones who really lead this whole process. So we have to make sure that we are getting and using that teacher feedback. It's absolutely essential as we want to make those changes to the curriculum. So, you know, this is how we fine tune the system. This is how we make sure that, you know, just because And I'll pick on Dallas. So, Dallas ISD covered 450 square miles. And we had students who lived in rural areas out in towards Seagoville and Box Springs, very rural, sort of communities. And then we had students who lived in very urban communities with, government housing and pretty difficult environments. And we had students who lived in North Dallas who went to fairly affluent schools. So when you're dealing with that variety of learning challenges, learning opportunities, learning differences, even though the district did its best to write a standards-based curriculum, it was critical because what the students in the rural school needed versus the students in the urban school versus the students in the affluent school is vastly different. And that's why campus leadership around curriculum and teacher leadership around curriculum and making sure that curriculum mapping happens is so vital and so essential. So when we think about curriculum mapping, and this comes from, you can read all of the different researchers here, but if we can apply that mental model to this and really employ systems thinking, then we're going to be much more successful in terms of how we map the curriculum. So if you think about what are those events that we need to make happen, and an event is defined as, like I said, unpacking a standard, aligning the curriculum, etc. Then we have to look at and identify those patterns and trends. So if I'm looking at the student achievement results from the previous school year with my, I don't know, fifth graders, the students that I'm teaching, what would I find in terms of their patterns, whether it was correct answers or even incorrect answers? So what are the gaps as well as the mastery levels for my students as a group? And then I need to break that down by smaller groups of students or cohorts, and then finally for individual students. Then we have to make sure too that we have a structure in place to address those. So for my students who've maybe mastered, let's say we're looking at standard 5, and I've got, 25% of my students mastered it, 50%, they not only mastered it, they got it at college and career ready level. Then I have another 50% of my students who mastered it, but then I still 25% who didn't. So what structure do I create to meet the needs of my class? Well, I may have to provide enrichment opportunities, so even in 5th grade, I may be doing some centers like they do in the early grades, where there's enrichment for my students and I regroup them. For my students who are on target, I'm going to continue to provide on grade level. Then for my students who need remediation, that may mean that, they're going to work with me in small groups so I can catch them up and give them the concepts. It may mean that they need to come to an after school tutoring session. We may do a pizza party during lunch and, catch them up. Then finally, we have to understand and create those mental models for our students so that they can connect learning. Oftentimes, what we teach our students, they don't automatically connect it to the real world. And so it's very, very important that we help and support them and assist them in doing that very thing. Okay. Also, too, this goes more into depth. I'm not going to read this to you. You guys can certainly read it. But how we help our students, as well as our teachers, to form those absolutely essential mental models. It's divided into 4 levels. And like I said, I think if you use this to help you through this process, and then, we used to teach mental models to our students so that they could assess where they were, and where it was that they needed support and help, but also where they felt really, really comfortable. So administrators, they play a very critical role, and we need to make sure that as leaders, we're supporting our teachers, and they do innovative and unusual things. Like they will ask their parents to fill out a questionnaire about their child. They participate in those meetings and those collaborative sessions. They provide the help and the support that is necessary to make all of this come together and happen. I am so sorry. There's something about me being on Zoom and my dogs just lose their minds. I don't know what it is. It's this and the phone. So, curriculum mapping really goes to the heart of our profession. And, you know, this is the meat and potatoes of the work that we do, so that our students can have that fulfilled life and that next generation is able to achieve. It's not a quick fix. You know, when you first start doing this, you're going to be learners. You're going to have a lot of trial and error, and sometimes you're going to get it great, and sometimes it's going to be like, oh my gosh, what have we done? But the more you practice curriculum mapping, just like the more you practice anything, the better you're going to get it, and the more you're going to feel comfortable using this. But we also need to remember that just like for our students, our teachers need adequate time to explore, to understand, to reflect, and then to deepen their learning. If we don't provide them that opportunity and we expect them to get it right the first time, then that's when we run into problems. But like I said, the more you do it, the more you practice it, the better you get. So if you're going to do this work, which I'm telling you, if you're not doing this work, you're doing a disservice to your children. Hang on one second. Sorry. Sorry, I put one dog out thinking that would help, but they still bark at each other through the door. So anyway, if you're going to plan and do this work, as I said, I'm telling you, you have to. If you're going to prepare our students for what they need. Remember too, there is that implementation dip. So what I mean by that is you'll start really gung-ho and, you know, we're doing this and we're seeing results. And then you'll have this dip where you feel frustrated, where maybe you're even angry. You feel like it's not working, it's a waste of time. Don't give up and don't quit. Celebrate those small as well as your large milestones along the way. And that dip, you'll come out of that dip and continue to move forward. So, with that being said, remember, curriculum mapping or understanding by design or whatever model that you choose, unpacking the curriculum, making sure that you understand those standards and that those standards are being taught to the depth of complexity required on the assessment. And then that you're implementing through instructional strategies the best practices you can is absolutely critical to this work. So thanks for tuning in. I apologize for my crazy dogs. Like I said, there seems to be something about the minute I get on Zoom that they just have to be little twerps. But anyway, I appreciate you guys. And if you have any questions, of course, let me know. Thanks, y'all. Have a great rest of your weekend.